How's it going, everybody? MTG Mondays here, and I'm back with some more Commander 2016 spoilers. I skipped a day because I had to work yesterday most of the day, and so I'm back on the 26th to go over about 19 cards today. First up, we have a Kiri Rope Thrower. Um, it is a red-white legendary creature. Comes into play as a 0/3 with First Strike and Vigilance, and its power gets +1 for each artifact that you control. And it also has Partner. So some of the upsides to this is that it has First Strike and Vigilance, which is really nice. It's a good attacker and a good blocker. It can get pretty huge, um, just depending on how many artifacts that you're playing. It does have Partner, so it allows you access to the red-white again, just like Bruised Taro. I think he's red-white. Some of the downsides is that it does start as 0/3 if you don't have any artifacts at all, and it will pretty much always fail the lightning bolt test unless you can somehow bolster the toughness. It's overall a pretty good card, and yeah, I can see it being pretty good in a red-white X artifact deck. Next up, we have Brea, Ethereum Shaper. She is one of the Nephilim commanders, I guess. She is white, blue, black, red. 4/4/4/4 can be very, very good with blink effects, being able to get 2 Thopters each time she comes into play. You can basically lightning bolt a player, grasp a darkness a creature, or soothing balm yourself. Her art is amazing. She is half made out of Ethereum metal, which is really, really cool. You can see some of the 2 Thopters that she brings with her in the background. There's actually more than 2, but you can see some Thopters that she brings with her. And yeah, it's just really colorful and neat. One of the downsides is you do have to sacrifice 2 artifacts, and you have to pay 2 mana for it. But I mean, that's a pretty low price to pay to be able to lightning bolt things over and over, or players over and over again, or grasp a darkness something. Next up is Coastal Breach. It's 7 for a Undaunted sorcery. Return all non-land permanents to their owner's hands. So it can be very, very powerful for cheap if you're playing with anything over 4 players, or even at 4 players, it's still really good. Because in a 4-player game, it's going to cost you 4. Um, and the only downside of mostly of all Undaunted cards is that it gets more and more expensive as the game goes on later and later. Conquerors Flail. I really, really like this card. It's 2 for a equipment that you can equip for 2. It's really good in 2+ color decks, being able to give basically whatever creature you have +1/1 for each color among permanents you control. So, I mean, if the creature itself is a red-green creature, then it gives itself +2. Um, but what's really awesome is the second ability. Being able to make your opponents not cast spells on your turn, as long as this is on a creature, is really, really good. And it's really cheap to equip. I couldn't really find a downside to this card, so yeah. Next up is Cruel Entertainment. 7 for a sorcery. Choose target player and another target player. The first player controls the second player during the second player's turn, and the second player controls the first player during the first player's next turn. And so this card, first of all, I love the name, I love the picture, and the effect is awesome. Um, they haven't really had an effect like this before, and so in a multiplayer game, it's going to be really funny to say, okay, you take their turn, and they take your turn, and just have them kind of mess each other's turns up. So it's gonna be funny to watch. It does cost 7, but I completely think it's totally fair for what this card does. I couldn't see it costing any less than 7, to be honest. Crystalline Crawler, aka Hedron Crawler's older brother. Um, this card can be very good. It can be 4 for a 5/5. Um, can remove multiple 1/1 counters in order to add a lot of mana to your mana pool if you need it. Can store up a lot of 1/1 counters, so it's really good in that effect. And I couldn't really see a downside to this card. I mean, other than if you're only playing it in a two-color deck, it could technically, I mean, it could come out for a, it'd be three for a 4/4. Even in a one-color deck, it's still two for a 4/4, but you're able to grow it by itself. So there's really no downside. I really like this card. Deep Glow Skate. Speaking of cards I really like, this card is probably one of my favorites of the set so far. One of my favorite decks to play is a Super Friends deck, and this card is going to bring it over the top, I believe. Being able to pair this with the guy that blinks cards with Soul Bond, I'm drawing a blank right now, but being able to pair it with this guy will take my Planeswalkers just out of control. Being able to basically double all of their counters for 2 mana after I play this guy is going to be pretty unfair. Like I said, it's amazing with blink effects, and the converted mana cost is completely fair for what this card does. Not only does it double any kind of +1/+1 counters, but loyalty counters, -1/1 counters, things like that, charge counters. This card is just very versatile, and I really like it. Fairy Artisans. Really interesting effect. So whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under an opponent's control, you create a token that's a copy of that creature, except it's an artifact in addition to its other types. And then you exile all other tokens created with Fairy Artisans. So you're effectively always going to have one artifact creature that's going to be a copy of an opponent's creature, which is really neat. So it's always going to change. I don't know. I kind of like this card, and I want to see how it works in a multiplayer situation. But yeah, it's pretty nice. It does have flying. It is a 2/2 for 4, though, so that's kind of the downside of it. And it's not really that big of a downside for what it does. Ishai Ojitai Dragon Speaker. It's 4 for a 1/1, so that's like the only negative, really. It only starts out as a 1/1, excuse me, and then it can get larger and larger. This card can definitely get out of hand, especially um, in multiplayer games. And so this card can get really, really large, and it can, if this is one of your generals, this can be a way to kill your opponents with general damage. It has partner, which is awesome. I really like the partner mechanic, and it's a freaking bird. Oh my God, I do have a bird deck. That's just kind of a pet deck that I have, and everything in the deck is either a bird or has a bird in the art, even the lands. So I'm excited just to have this for my bird deck. Kanaios and Tiro of Melodus. I really like the art. It's very Journey into Nyx and all that stuff, which it's harkening back to with the Melodus thing. But yeah, I really like the art. You can see like the Titan guys in the background. It is one of the generals for the Nephilim colors of red, green, white, blue. So that's pretty neat. It's fair card advantage and fair ramp because it lets your opponents do the same thing. It is only 4 for a 2/8, which is good, so it blocks very well. And the only downside is that it's too group huggy for me. I'm not really a group hug type person, but if you are into that kind of thing and you want a fair deck that can probably be better for advantage to you, then I believe that this guy could definitely help you. Yeah, I mean, it only lets people draw on your turn, which is good. But so next up we have Ludwig Necro Alchemist. I love this art. This guy is just Ludwig is cool in being able to see all his creations, and we already got to see his Opus creature beforehand, and I believe he's actually working on it in this picture. I love this style of art. It just really reminds me of like my favorite horror movies and stuff. Anyways, it's a great card advantage. Being able to basically draw a card at the beginning of each player's turn, as long as somebody else loses life, is really good. It kind of does draw a little bit of hate if it's not your turn, because they'd be more inclined to attack you and not let you draw a card, basically. It does have partner, which is pretty cool. Very cheap converted mana cost, 3 for a 1/4. Its only downside is that it is only a 1/4. It's still not that bad of a downside with the effects. Yeah, it's a really good card. Parting Thoughts. 3 for a sorcery, destroy target creature, draw X cards, lose X life, where X is the number of counters on that creature. So at worst, it's just a 3 converted mana cost removal, and at best, it's a 3 converted mana cost with lots of card advantage, depending on how many counters are on that creature. Yeah, the downside is that it's a friggin' sorcery. Ugh, I hate when they do this, when they make a great removal, but make it a sorcery. I can kind of understand why with the possibility of drawing a lot of cards at instant speed for only 3, but still. Why? Ravos Soul Tender. This art is awesome. It's definitely um, Journey into Nyx, Born of the Gods art style with the stars and the godlike creatures. Um, Very cool. It is a black and white general with partner, has flying. Uh, it's got a glorious anthem effect for your creatures, and being able to return creatures that die from your graveyard to your hand is just pretty good. Its only downside that is a 5 for a 2/2. Um, it is 5 for a 2/2 with flying that is also an anthem and gets your creatures back, but it still seems just kind of lackluster compared to most of the other generals. Rayhan, Last of the Abzan. This card is pretty nuts, actually. I read this and I had to read it a couple times to make sure I was reading it right. And yeah, first of all, the art is awesome. Um, just the battle scene that you can see is just very cool. You can see crazy building, or you can see a building on fire, and yeah, very neat. It's 3 for a 3/3, so it comes in play with 3/1/1 counters on it. It is modular for creatures, basically. So whenever a creature you control dies or is put into a command zone, if it had one or more +1/1 counters on it, you can put that many 1/1 counters on a target creature. So yeah, definitely awesome. Modular for creatures. And its partner. Um, there's no real downside that I can see. This card is very good. I will be making a deck out of this as soon as I get one. Saskia the Unyielding. Very cool art. I like the crispness of this art. Um, the axe that she has almost looks like Garrick's axe in a way, which is kind of cool. Um, she is a general for the Nephilim colors of black, red, green, white, which is a neat combination. She has Vigilance and Haste, which is really awesome for her. Being able just to play her on turn 4 or even turn 3 if you can, and swing for 3 is awesome. Um, and you can also, when she comes into play, you choose an opponent or a player actually. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, it deals that much to the chosen player. So you either split up your damage to another player, so you're attacking, effectively attacking 2 people at once, or you just deal double damage to one player. The only downside is that she's 4 for a 3/4, but given the ability and her having Vigilance and Haste, it's not really that much of a downside. I had to pick something, I just didn't know what to pick. Next up is Selfless Squire. Holy cow, I really like this card. I didn't think I would like it at first, and then I read it a few times and kind of went over a couple scenarios in my head. But this card can actually be quite a blowout. So it's a great effect. First of all, it's 4 for a 1/1 with flash. Whenever Selfless Squire enters the battlefield, prevent all damage that would be dealt to you this turn. It doesn't say combat damage, which is very important. It's just all damage. Whenever damage that would be dealt to you is prevented, put that many +1/+1 counters on Selfless Squire. So if your opponent is going to somehow blow you out with some kind of crazy infinite damage thing, then you can just play this card and hopefully soak up all the damage. If your opponent's going to attack you with 1,000 creatures, then you can just play this card, and this card becomes giant. Um, the only downside is that it does cost 4, but it's definitely a fair cost for what this card does. It is a creature, it does get huge, and it just prevents all damage, and it doesn't say combat damage, so I really like this card. Stonehoof Chieftain, 8 for an 8/8, trample indestructible centaur warrior. Whenever another creature you control attacks, it gains trample and indestructible till the end of turn. This card is pretty cool. Um, it's definitely in the realm of green fatties for sure. I mean, it's 8 for an 8/8 with trample and indestructible. Yeah, makes all your creatures just that much better when it's in play. Uh, the only real downside is that it's 8 for an 8/8 with trample and indestructible, but it still makes your creatures awesome. So you're not going to get this effect super early unless you can kind of cheat him into play somehow. But other than that, I mean, he doesn't really have that much of a downside. The only downside is you might have to wait for it. Tana the Bloodsower. I really like this art. I really love the art of this set. It's not too cartoony, and it's a lot of it's like realistic-y art. But I don't know. I just really like the art in this set. She is two, a red and a green for a 2/2 elf druid legendary creature trample. When she deals combat damage to a player, you create that many 1/1 green sapperling tokens, and she has partner. She has a potential of making a lot of tokens. Uh, Being able to somehow give her the ability to get +1/1 for each creature that you control can make her get out of control really fast. Um, she has trample, which is good to be able to just to deal damage to your opponent. She has partner, so I mean, she gives you the access to red green, and you can play another commander to get some more colors to support her. The only real downside is that she starts out. I mean, she starts out and stays unless you bolster her some way else as a 2/2 for 4. So that's the only downside that I could really find. I think last up is Timna the Weaver. I really love this art. This is what I was talking about with the art in the last picture. Um, it's very simple and it's just a very cool image. Um, she's definitely spider-like. She's got the webs in the background, and then she also has all the wool and the loom and everything. But it's just very cool. So she has lifelink, which is pretty cool. I love creatures with lifelink. At the beginning of your post-combat main phase, you may pay X life, where X is the number of opponents that were dealt combat damage this turn. If you do, draw X cards. So when I just made this PowerPoint about 5 minutes ago, I read through her and looks like I read her wrong, and I said that she works well with Extort. Yeah, she doesn't really work well with Extort. I didn't read the whole combat damage part, so minus that on her. She does have partner, which is cool. She gives you the access to white black, and some of the negatives are that she has lifelink on a 2/2 body. It's not really that relevant. Um, Once in a while, you might be able to gain 2 life, basically. The the big negative for her though is that she relies on other cards for the ability. She relies on you to have an established board already in order for her to become even good. So yeah, that was the downside of the Timna the Weaver. Okay, everybody, that is it for today. I'm sure to do more of these when more spoilers come out. Make sure you let me know what you guys think about the new Commander 2016 in the comments down below, and I'll see you guys next time.